Good evening. We are back to the study of the Spirit's book. We are studying Law of Progress, which is chapter 8 of book 3. And today we start the topic civilization, which is on question 790. Okay? Philip, can you read for us? You are on mute. Still on mute. Still on mute.
How's that?
There you go. Now you can.
That's interesting. The system has changed. 790, civilization. Is civilization the progress of humankind, or according to some philosophers, its decadence? It is incomplete progress. Humankind does not suddenly morph from infancy to maturity. Is it rational to condemn civilization? You should condemn those who abuse it rather than God's work.
Yeah, when we talk about progress and we talk about civilization, we've been studying progress, the law of progress for these past few weeks. And again, progress is a natural law. So it's going to happen, either we like it or not. And we can help progress and work with progress, or resist progress and face the consequences, personal consequences for preventing progress from happening, right? So with the progress of civilization is also part of the law of progress. And again, we are benefiting from this progress, right? Does progress creates and the development of civilization creates new problems? Yes, it does. But that's part of also our learning and our challenging of our intellectual progress, right? Emmanuel was asked about this question in one of the books of Chico Xavier that they discuss specific questions about the Spirit's book and Emmanuel explanations, right? And they asked specifically that to Emmanuel. And Emmanuel said, there's nothing wrong with the progress. It is actually a part of the human evolution. The problem is with humans, right? What we do with progress. So he said, he gave the example, right, of cars. This was 1950, right? Is it car a great achievement of progress? Yes, it is. Now, are we going to blame someone that drives imprudently and have an accident? Is the fault of the car and the progress, or is the fault of the driver, right? So whenever we use progress to our help and assistance, we are aligning ourselves with the natural law, with God's law, which is the law of progress. Of course, we are in perfect spirits. We live in an imperfect world, so the progress will be imperfect, and civilization, as we understand, will be also imperfect, right? We see sometimes people running away from civilization, right? Trying to go back to nature and things like that. And again, when we talk about extremes, extremes are never good, right? So running away from civilization is not the solution for our issues with progress, with civilization. Again, if we want to live in nature, there's nothing wrong in people that don't like to live in big cities, agglomeration, and prefers a more calm life. But to isolate yourself from society, it harms your progress, intellectual and moral, right? Because only by interacting with others is that we learn more about ourselves, we learn more about how to help ourselves and others, and so from there becomes the moral and intellectual progress. So again, there's nothing wrong with the progress. On the contrary, that's the law. a natural law. The problem is always with us imperfect spirits that don't know how to deal with progress. So those that have some power try to prevent progress from happening. Those that don't have power isolate themselves or try to run away from others. And again, our responsibility towards ourselves is to live in society in any way that we can and learn from it and help it. So the problem is with those that abuse it, like the spirits tells clearly here to Kardec. Okay? Yes, Danny.
Every time we come to this part of the book, I ask myself the same questions. And I'm sorry if I'm going to be bugging you the whole the whole reading tonight. The way you say civilization, it means to me urbanization.
Oh.
Because you say people retreat to nature and then or they go away, but to me civilization doesn't mean not incorporating nature because we are part of nature. We are natural beings. We decompose. Without nature, we don't survive. No water, no oxygen, no food, all provided by nature. So this always has been bugging me for all these years that we come back to this part of the book. Civilization to me is not equal big cities and urbanization.
Oh, it does.
I can't put that in my mind.
No, when you live in a farm and you are using internet and you are using machines to take care of the crops, this is civilization. Why it's not civilization? This is progress, right? The definition of civilization here, in my opinion, and I don't know if someone doesn't agree, encompasses everything, right? Living in big cities, in small cities, in farms, yes. What I'm mentioned here is isolating yourself, going to live in the jungle by yourself or in the middle of nowhere by yourself. That's running away from civilization. Living in a farm, you are living, and if you are working in a farm and things like that, you're living in civilization. Don't you agree on?
Yeah, we call the very law of society, right? So obviously there is a differentiation between society and civilization, right? Because the animals also live in society, right? There's animals that are social beings. Chimpanzees, gorillas, lions, they live in their society. So the way I read civilization here is an organized society, a group of individuals would establish laws, hierarchies, and that includes, of course, urbanization is part of society. The development of cities, the development of governments, things from the Egyptians. To me, that's what I read here as civilization. It does include urbanization, but does not exclude nature.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
791.
Yep.
Will civilization be purified eventually so that the evils caused by it will disappear? Yes, when humankind's moral nature is as fully developed as its intelligence. The first fruit cannot appear before the flower blooms.
Yeah, here the spirits give the more, clear answer on how civilization will become a nice or a good place or a nice environment for all of us when moral nature is fully developed, right? When we reach a level of moral evolution, of course, no longer as imperfect spirits, that we work always thinking about the benefit of everyone around us and humanity, right? We stop being selfish and act always to do to others what you like others to do unto us, like Jesus taught us. Then we are going to reach a level where civilization will be, in a sense, purified, as they say here. I'm not sure if that's the best word, right? But will be a nice world to live in a sense, right? And again, when you go already to countries that respect the law, the majority of people live within the laws and respect the laws, you find countries that are more developed morally, right, than others. We have some examples of these countries nowadays, few of them. So we can see by looking at them, they are imperfect countries, they still have a lot of problems, but we can see where we can go, right? Next step. And even beyond that, right? We can imagine, it's not impossible to imagine a place that everyone respects the rights of others, everyone thinks about others before thinking about themselves. It's utopia now. Yes, it's a utopia now, definitely, because we are 24 billion spirits living here that are imperfect spirits, right? But eventually, as the laws of progress, and we are all going to progress, we're going to get somewhere. I don't know if it's going to be on Earth. Maybe we'll be in a different world, right? But yes, we are going to get there. That's a guarantee. One, because it's the law of progress is a natural law, we are going to continue progressing. Each one at their own speed, but we will continue progressing. And if we continue progressing, eventually we'll get to this place where humankind will live in a nice civilization. No guarantees that's going to be on Earth, not because the planet itself, but because of the movement that spirits have. Maybe you reach a point that you develop faster than Earth and you decide to go to another place, or maybe Earth will develop faster than you and you have to go to a less evolved planet. But yes, everything will happen. How long it's going to take, that's a different story and depends on us again.
No, what you say from the people who are this time incarnated in countries that are fully
Develop.
we say developed, so they have education, they have health, they have a lot of developed things, like more in a sense of intelligence, but why they are there? They need a lot of moral development.
Yeah, it's a very good question, right? Why you find yourself in a country like that and not born in a very poor country, right? Depends on, it's an individual evolutionary path, right? So we are always in the best place, we are always born in the best place possible for our development. So maybe they have family members there, maybe they have opportunities there that will allow them to evolve. Maybe they need to learn something from them that they are, because if you think those places, they still have crime, very little, but they still have crime. So why are those spirits there incarnating there if they're going to commit crimes? Nobody incarnates to commit crimes. There is a lot of suicides, right? In some of them, not all of them. Yeah. But again, it's the best opportunity for these spirits. It's the most appropriate type of incarnation for them at this stage. But again, they are imperfect spirits. We are all imperfect spirits. 99% of the spirits around Earth are imperfect spirits. So, you have opportunities. Some take advantage of the opportunities. Some miss the opportunity. So those that decide not to stay there. I used to work with a friend that was born in Holland and had everything that was given to him, and he couldn't stand living there. He went to live in Brazil for a while. He went to live in Vietnam. He lived all around the world. And when he found himself in Rio, he thought that he was in paradise. That's what he wanted in life. And then he was transferred here to New York, and he was always complaining, I loved Rio. I don't know why I was transferred here. So the first opportunity he had, he went back. Again, it's the best place for him to be born was in Holland, but his free will didn't allow him to stay there. He wanted to go to other places, right? And again, as we are progressing, this interchange of people around the world is helping the whole world to progress, right? I read that on Middle Ages, the vast majority of spirits, of incarnated beings, they wouldn't travel more than 50 miles from their home in their whole life. The furthest they went their whole life was not more than 50 miles. Again, we have had travelers because we know that, but the majority of human beings nowadays, the majority of people travel all around, right? So isn't this progress, right? Is it being able to fly to other places progress? Yes. Now, when you have a accident that a plane falls and kills everyone on the plane, of course, those that lose the loved ones can ask the question, why, the progress for my loved one to die. But again, if we take a bird's eye view of progress, right? We are all progressing. We all have to go through challenges in our lives, different challenges for each one. And one of the challenges is we are all going to return to the spiritual world, because the only guarantee that we have in this life that we are going to discarnate and return to the spiritual world. How? It's on each one's path, right? And some of us will have to discarnate in violent deaths or young or other, but we return to the spiritual world, we start again next time. It's our individual journey, right? So, yes, we would love to be born in these developed countries, right? But maybe that's not the best opportunity for us to progress. So we are not going to. Maybe you have the nature and tendency to be able to help those struggling. So, you think about Doctors Without Borders, right? Why do they choose to go to the most difficult places in the world to help? What type of spirit is this? Definitely a more evolved spirit than the average, because it's not for everyone, right? So they go face very difficult challenges, sometimes die of diseases or die of violence in these places, but they are doing what helps them and others to progress. So again, we don't have a clear answer, but we have an individual answer. It's what's better for that spirit in that specific incarnation.
792.
Yes.
Why does civilization not produce all the good it can produce? Because human beings are not yet ready or willing to obtain that good. Could it also be because it generates new passions in creating new wants? Yes, and because a spirit's faculties do not progress at the same rate. Everything takes time. You cannot expect perfect fruit from an incomplete civilization.
Well, again, the question here is more in the sense that we can do better than what we are doing. So why don't we? And it goes back to the faculties, the passions we create. We have we have selfishness, we have greed, all these imperfections that accompanies the spirits, right? And we talked a lot about this in terms of food, right? We have enough food to feed the whole world. The problem that we have is distribution, greed, because they go to these places that are suffering from hunger, and they throw food from planes, right, to help feed them, these people. And some leaders of the gangs take away the food and don't distribute them, right? So it's human beings, right? Unfortunately, imperfect human beings. So we are not producing all the good that we can, civilization. And the question was 200 years ago, almost, and still 200 years later, we are still not producing everything, all the good that we can, because still of greed, of selfishness, of all these things. And we cannot expect to be perfect. We are far from. Society is not going to be perfect before we human beings are perfect spirits, right? So until we reach perfection in our evolutionary path, we are going to live in an imperfect world with everything that derives from living in an imperfect world, right? And again, each place is different, and there are places that are more, it's easier to live. There are places more difficult, but we are always going to face these challenges and situations that are more appropriate for us to be born in. Okay?
It's very interesting that the question Kardec asked to produce all the good. And the answer is to obtain. I think that's very interesting. They demonstrated that what is most important to us is our will, that we cannot produce something that's going to be wasted because we're not willing to make use of it yet.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
You know, sometimes I reflect on this new cars, driverless cars, right? This is progress. Definitely, it's progress, right? And you can imagine one day where all cars will be driverless and we'll have no accidents and things like that. Can imagine. But if you ask all the drivers nowadays if they want to have a driverless car or they want to continue driving, I know I like to drive. I would like to continue driving, right? So it's the ones with the, can we produce drive? We are evolving. We are producing better and better driverless cars. China is already using flying cars, right? It takes you from one place to the other. Now, what about the wants, right? Do we want that? The majority, I don't believe the majority wants, but we have young people that do not want to learn how to drive nowadays, right? Your son is one of them, right? Yeah, I have another one here. Yeah, so again, this is only going to increase because the more you have less necessity to drive, the less you have new drivers, right? And you can argue if that's progress or not, and people will discuss, but that's how we are progressing, right? So it's interesting. It's what you said, the new ones, right? Do we want? Not everybody. I think the majority does not want.
We're not willing to obtain those goods. So imagine that, a system of law that produces tremendous amount of equality amongst different social classes. Are we willing to consume that law, to really distribute equally, to really accept equality amongst everybody?
We're not there. We're not there yet. If we were there, communism would work, right? because why does communism does not work, didn't work, it then does not work? Because we're not prepared to live in equality. We're not, and we still, we want to be better than our neighbors. We average, right? We want to be better. We want to live better. We want to have more. It's nature. It's human nature. Still human nature.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
That reminds the Jesus in the home, one of the chapters from the last study, the tree of the
Red light.
yeah.
The element.
I was reading this week because I missed that class. So that's a perfect example.
Absolutely, and that's exactly right. You have that tree that you produce all the goodness that we need, but we all have to contribute to make it flourish. But everybody wants to have the tree for themselves and not contribute with one another, so the plants die, they can produce.
Okay. 793.
What are the signs of a fully developed civilization? You recognize it by its moral development. You think you are advanced because you have made great discoveries and brilliant inventions, and because you are better sheltered and clothed than early human societies. However, you will only truly have the right to call yourselves civilized when you have eradicated vices from your society and when you live as brothers and sisters, practicing Christian charity. Until then, you are merely enlightened nations that have only passed through the first phase of civilization. Civilization has its degrees, like everything else. A civilization in transition is an incomplete civilization. It produces distinct evils unknown in the primitive state. Still, it constitutes a natural and necessary progress that remedies the problems it causes. As civilization is perfected, it ends some of the problems it causes, and these troubles vanish completely with moral progress. The most advanced nation from any two that have reached the top of the social ladder is the one with the least amount of selfishness, greed, and pride. The one whose habits are morally better, more intellectual than material, and where intelligence can develop freely. It is the one with the greatest amount of kindness, good faith, compassion, and generosity. It is where prejudices of class and birth are not rooted because they are compatible with the true love for one's neighbor. Its laws do not always privilege, its laws do not allow privileges and are the same for every member of its society. It is the one where justice is administered with the least amount of bias, and the weak always find support against the strong. It is where human life, beliefs, opinions are respected, and where there is the smallest number of poor and unhappy individuals. Finally, it is a nation where people who are willing to work are guaranteed the essentials for survival.
Okay. So what does fully developed civilization looks like? That's the question that Kardec asks. And the answer from the spirits is you recognize by its moral development. And then they talked about, so we thinking that we are very advanced because we made great discoveries and we are better protected than early human societies. But the true developed civilization is the one that have eradicated vices and live as brothers and sisters practicing Jesus' teachings, right? Love one another and do to others what you like others to do unto you. Until then, we are marrying enlightened nations that have only passed through the first phase of civilization. So I think we went through the first phase of civilization. But then Kardec explains here that civilization has its degrees like everything else. And we are in transition. So we are in complete civilization. We can see that we are in transition. Things are changing all the time, right? And it's interesting when he says it produces distinct evils unknown in the primitive state. So you think when the first cars appeared, right? They developed the first cars, since we just talked about cars. There were no traffic laws, right? Because you didn't have enough cars to have a problem with it. And then the first car, I read the other day, the first car killed someone. It was, I think, in 1900, a pedestrian in 1900 or 1890. And then they started creating laws to regulate. First, you have cars and you have chariots, and you start to regulate how they could drive. So, what is this? Progress that remedies the problems. Progress that remedies the problems it causes, right? So we create progress, and we create different needs, right? We need different regulations, right? And then eventually, the more we align the human laws, and we're going to study this in the next chapter, with divine laws, human laws no longer will be needed because natural laws are perfect. But until then, we need to take care of our society, right? And we take care of our society by regulating it, creating human laws. Now, in terms of human laws, as Kardec explains very well here, if you compare two nations, is the one that is more evolved is the one that have the least amount of selfishness, greed, and pride, right? And then he describes, and we see in this description how far we still are, right? Because there are still prejudices of class and birth everywhere, right? Even in the developed nations, most developed nations. Laws do not allow privileges and are the same for every member of its society. Can we say that that's true here in this country? It's not true yet, right? The laws exist for everybody, but some have a better way of avoiding the laws than others. There is prejudice in fulfilling the laws also, right? Because we see cases happening every day of injustices according to class and of races. So we are progressing. If we look back at the time of this book, right? We had slavery here in this country, right? We had gangs running freely around Manhattan, right? Nowadays.
Yeah.
Sorry?
There's the word.
Philip.
No, I said they're still here.
They're still here, but they're living. Yes, we still have gangs, definitely, right? It's a problem. We have gangs in a lot of places, but it's not a widespread problem, right? It's a localized problem. So it's better than it was 150 years ago. Right? There is 150 years ago was legal to discriminate against different races, right? Nowadays, there is discrimination, yes, and a lot, but it's not legal. The fact that it's not legal doesn't mean that the law is followed and that it's being. The punishments also are not as efficient as they should be. But the fact that it's illegal to discriminate, it's already a progress, right? It's already a path towards the more developed society, right? So we are progressing, but we still have a lot to go. And again, we discussed the law of progress here, and we talk about civilization and us as society progressing according to our own limitations and our own imperfections. Okay?
$794. Can society be sufficiently governed only by natural law without human-made laws? If the laws of nature were properly understood and people were willing to practice them, they would be sufficient. But society has its demands and requires special laws.
Again, the natural law is the only law that we need theoretically, but being imperfect spirits, we need human-made laws, because the lack of laws cause chaos, and we know that when there are some events that happen, some calamities that happen, and we saw it in New Orleans, for instance, right? It created chaos, and people abused, people stole things, and people ran over things that, because if we don't have the control of the human laws, we are still not prepared to live with this, right? Go back to traffic, right? Do we need laws to say that 8th Avenue has only one direction? We need a bike lane and everything. If humans respected each other to the fullest, we wouldn't need traffic laws, right? Everybody will find a way to respect others and find a way to move around without disrespecting the others, right? But we can't. We need traffic laws. We need things that direct us on how to behave and to follow, because we are imperfect spirits. But eventually, we won't need human laws. But we are still some thousands of years away from that, right? Until we reach perfection.
Well, the thing is, society has its demands and requires special laws. So traffic laws, let's say, they'll always be necessary to have. Now, as we progress, our laws will be based on the divine laws. You'll be based on law of equality, or be based on laws of labor and everything else. There has to be traffic laws in even perfect society, because it regulates. Now, Fifth Avenue goes one way. Everybody knows, everybody agree, no problem again, we're going to break that law. Okay, there is bike lanes. Okay, so because if there is not, the cyclists would not know where to ride, and the car would not know where to go. So you have regulations to keep things in order. That's important. But as we progress, all our laws will be based and following the natural laws.
Yeah. Okay.
Too far.
795.
Yeah, I can't see the beginning.
No?
Yeah, you put it up too much. Oh, there it is. What causes the instability of human laws? During barbaric times, laws were made by the strongest, who established them to their own advantage. Therefore, as human beings have acquired a clearer understanding of justice, these laws have had to be modified. Human laws will become more stable as they approach true justice, meaning as they represent everyone and are in harmony with natural law. Civilization has created new needs for human beings, and these needs are relative to their social standing. People in civilized societies regulate the rights and duties of their standing through human laws. They have often created imaginary rights and duties that are condemned by the natural law, and that every nation removes from its code as it progresses, because people are influenced by their passions. Natural law is absolute and the same for all. Human law is variable and progressive. At the inception of human societies, it only could establish the rights of the strongest.
Well, the instability of human laws is caused by progress, right? As we progress, we need to change the laws to be more adequate to our level of evolution. And of course, the first laws were the laws of the strongest, right? The strongest, the powerful one would impose whatever laws they wanted, and the others had to follow. But you go to the Roman Empire, there were laws in the Roman Empire, but they were very beneficial to the dominant class. The slaves wouldn't have any protection for them, right? Then, as we evolve, our laws become go more and more into the direction of the natural law, of God's law. And of course, the more we get closer to the natural law, more stable they become, right? Because some of the laws that we have today are laws that, in theory, are defends everyone, right? Protects the rights of everyone, in theory. Now, to put in practice is a different story. But we don't need to change the law. The law is there, right? And it's a good law. The application of the law is the problem. In more ancient times, the problem was with the law, right? When you had slaves, for instance, the slave owners had laws protecting them. What were the rights of the slaves? They didn't have any rights. Now, when slave was abolished and the laws progressed, nowadays, again, we have a lot of imperfect laws, but the need to change the laws become less and less necessary, and more necessary becomes us to adapt and follow the laws, right? I remember when I was young in Brazil, they used to say, Brazil has a lot of laws, but some of them are there just for decoration, right? Nobody followed. Again, so if you have a good law, but nobody follows, something has to change, right? And it's not the law. The law is good. We have to change the punishment, right? Unfortunately, that's the application of the law and the punishment, right?
There's three things, right? It's the creation of laws, the reinforcement of the laws, and compliance with the laws.
Yeah.
Three different things. Now, they can create wonderful laws. Brazil has great laws, but you need to reinforce, and the population needs to comply to it.
Yeah.
Problem resolved.
Yeah. And, and again, it applies to all everywhere. And now there are countries that have better laws than others, right? And there are countries that follow those laws more efficiently than others. These are more developed countries. The less developed countries have, unfortunately, more imperfect laws. But again, if we take the bird's eye view and look at society in the last 2,000 years, we can see that the laws nowadays, you cannot say that the laws nowadays are not better than the laws 2,000 years ago, right? Of course, there will be few people 2,000 years ago that would benefit more from their laws than they would today. But in general, the laws nowadays are better aligned with moral evolvement. But still, we have a long way to go, right? Yes, Danny.
What about the laws that some religions follow that it was passed on like thousands of years ago? They are founding sacred texts regarding, I don't know, rituals, food, or even like molding actually the entire culture. So this is more like a religious specific religious law?
Yeah.
But it's human or not?
Human, yeah. The Mosaic law, which is one that we always, Moses brought the Ten Commandments, right? Which are divine laws. But it was not enough to discipline the people there traveling, the barbarian people traveling through the desert. So he created another 600 and something laws, which are the so-called Mosaic law. And they follow the ultra-Orthodox Jews follow those laws until today because they believe that these are God's law. We have to respect. It's a religious law. It's not a human law. It's a religious law.
It's not a natural law.
And it's not a natural law. Yes. The natural law are God's law and are perfect. If a law is not aligned with the divine law in the sense that you can question it, right? For instance, they cannot eat pork, right? Why is that a divine law? Does it make sense to be a divine law, or it's a tradition and they had their reasons and they want to continue following? Nothing wrong in following the religious law if they feel comfortable. You should feel comfortable with the laws you follow. But to say that this is a divine law, it's a form of controlling. And also, all the religions have their own laws to control their population, right? To impose fear, to impose respect, because that's the way religions have always used the so-called divine laws, which are not divine laws, right? But they are the religious laws to keep the flock controlled, right? So is it wrong? No, it's not wrong. It's just the way they do it. And for those that are comfortable in respecting and following their laws, that's good for them also. But we have to understand that divine laws are unchangeable laws. If a law, you look at the law and you look at it and say, well, this law can be changed because it's not an unchangeable law, then it's not a divine law.
But within the context of those questions, that like as a part of a civilization, they are not following the progress or the evolution of civilization. They're stuck behind, or it's just it's complicated.
Complicated, right? Yes and no, right? If you talk about the Amish that live in the 19th century, right? They are not following the progress of civilization, definitely. But some of the customs of some of the religions also prevent people from fully living into society with all the progress. But again, sometimes people need that type of control because at the stage of the evolution they maybe they won't recognize that they need, but it's important for them, right? I was talking to a friend some time ago, and he was talking about a family member that follows a specific religion and used to be a spiritist, right? And he was saying, no, she needs a religion that imposes what she can and cannot do because she cannot. If she has all the free will that spiritism gives, she's going to abuse it. She can control herself. She needs to be controlled by rules and regulations of an established religion. Many people are like that, and that's fine. That's a need that some people have. Again, we are at imperfect spirits at different levels of evolution, so we will need different paths for each one of us, right? According to our needs. I don't know if I have something to
Yeah, any dogma, anything that, any statement that cannot be questioned, cannot be challenged, is anti-progress. Anything. So religions, they're dogmatic, they are anti-progress. Simple as like that. Religion that creates a dogma in which men have privileges and women have none is anti-progress. So yes, any institution, religion or otherwise, who have its system based on dogmas are anti-progress. And we see over there, right there, unshakable faith is only that which can meet reasons face to face in every act of human life.
Yeah. Again, the reason is what really, the basis is the reason, right? If we cannot reason because it's imposed, then it delays progress. Okay.
796. Is the severity of criminal laws necessary for society as it stands today? A depraved society requires more severe laws, but your laws, unfortunately, are designed to punish wrongdoing after the fact, rather than eliminating the source of bad behavior. Only education can reform humankind, and then you will no longer require such harsh laws.
It's interesting, right? Because 150 years later, we haven't changed much in that aspect, right? Our laws are still punishing instead of educating. Our prisons end up causing more harm than good for many of those that are in prison. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have, because we need to prevent individuals from causing harm to themselves and to society. So we need prisons, we need institutions that can put these individuals there. But unfortunately, we are still punishing the wrongdoing, and we are lacking education, right? And it hasn't changed much since the times of Kardec. There is progress, yes. There are prisons nowadays that are better than they used to be, but still the minority, unfortunately. But at the time of Kardec, all the prisons, you were thrown there and left with to when you were not killed, which was most common, you were left there on your own. And before that, at the Roman times, prisons were for temporary, while we wait execution, right? So you didn't stay in prison as condemned for 20 years in prison. You go to prison because you were condemned to death, or you were there until they decide what to do with you. Nowadays, we already have laws that try to prevent these individuals to return to society and to prevent them from causing more damage to themselves and to society. But in that aspect, we are very far from being even decent in terms of how we treat those that do a lot of wrongdoings. And again, this is a reflection of society, because our society, they want to punish. If you ask people around what should be done to people that are doing these actions that cause harm to others, they don't want to educate, they want to punish. You should throw them in jail to the rest of their lives without caring what they do with them in jail. If they are killed by other prisoners, good for them, right? That's what the majority of society thinks nowadays, right? More than 50% is still in favor of a death penalty here in this country, unfortunately, right? So again, only education can reform humankind, and we are still lacking education, unfortunately. Okay, last one.
797. How can human beings be led to reform their laws? This occurs naturally, based on the circumstances and through the influence of more advanced individuals who drive the world forward on the path of progress. It has already changed significantly and will continue to do so. Just wait and see.
Yeah, I was reading this, right? And I was thinking of Socrates, right? Socrates was arrested and condemned to die. And then they came before to free him, right? They opened the door, the guard opened the door and said, I can't allow you to stay in jail. I want you to go free. And he said, I'm not going to escape. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm going to stay here. You know, if I escape means that I'm trying to run away from something that I didn't do. That's the example, right? When we get to that level, right, of evolution, is more advanced individuals who drive the world forward on the path of progress. But in terms of the reform of the laws, human laws, we still have a very long way to go. But we're moving forward. Again, when we talked about death penalty a couple of weeks ago, right? I brought the statistic, right? In the developed countries, the only country that considered developed country that still had the death penalty is this country, the United States. All the other developed countries do no longer have death penalty. At the time of Kardec, all of them had, right? England abolished the death penalty, I think it was in the 60s or 50s or 60s, right? So it is progress. So when you look around and you see that all developed countries, with one exception, abolished death penalty, it means that in another 150 years or 200 years, all countries will have abolished the death penalty. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop killing others because of other things, but officially killing others, it's going to be less and less. Even when we look at wars, right? Wars are progressing. We are trying to protect more individuals, even those that are countries that go to war. They try to cause less damage than they used to cause, even in the time of the Second World War and things like that, right? So it's progress. Sometimes it's difficult to look with an impartial view, but it is progress. Okay, so we stop here. Next week we will talk about the influence of Spiritism on progress, which is the last item on this law of progress. Then we move to law of equality. So what we have this weekend on Saturday, we have our good friend Edward Christie that is going to give the lecture for the United States Spiritist Federation. It's called Seeking Faith by Edward Christie, our friend that used to be part of our group, and now it's part of the Inner Enlightenment Spiritist group. The United States Spiritist Federation released a new book, Joan of Arc, Medium by Leon Denis. It's a new translation. It's available on the United States Spiritist Federation bookstore. If you are interested in reading the story of Joan of Arc, Josara is the one that did the translation. This coming Sunday, it's the last Sunday of the month, the fourth Sunday, we are going to have our Q&A session. Please bring your questions. On Wednesday, the book club is going to continue discussing chapter 2 of the book Ardus Ascension by Victor Hugo and Divaldo Franco. Okay? Carol, can you do our final prayer?
Yes, certainly, John. Thank you very much for hosting. Thank you, Elmo and Philip. Thank you for reading for us this evening, and all who are participating, we thank you. Civilization evolves and will be purified as humankind's moral and intellectual qualities progress. Isolation can be an error if it is to avoid living in society. We act altruistically by practicing love, charity, and lessening our pride, selfishness, and greed. We are born in the best place for our development. Free will, however, plays a role in our evolution. We are progressing through our challenges, and eventually we will reincarnate wherever it is appropriate. There are natural laws applying to everyone, and also human laws, which are needed to direct us as imperfect spirits. Laws of today are moving toward the natural law of God. Only education can reform humankind. And unfortunately, prisons and institutions still exist, but we are progressing. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for guiding and inspiring us this evening. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us and for our loved ones, our teachers, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, our workers, and all of our participants. We pray for inner peace and especially now for world peace and for those who are suffering in the physical and spiritual worlds. We pray for our center, SGNY, and all spiritual centers throughout the world, that they may grow, prosper, expand, and be protected throughout the day and throughout the night. As we close, we humbly ask for safety and protection as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. And may we remind ourselves now to go forth as beacons of love, of light, of peace, of service, and charity, which is love in action. May peace and love prevail. So be it.